Hello. We're going to start off the semester by looking at an introduction to data. So the study of statistics is based upon two concepts. Those concepts are variation and data. Or if you want to be a little bit more clever, it's variation in the data. So let's start off by talking about data. So data are observations which are typically quantitative which are numbers, or qualitative, which are characteristics. Information about a subject that you're studying. Okay, so an example could be if you're going through and studying the height of individuals, of people, heights would be an example of quantitative information. An example of qualitative information could be sex or race or some other things that are not numbers, things that are characteristics about the individuals that you're going through and you're studying. So variation, so that's data, and then variation is the difference in the observations. So the manner in which the observations differ. And statistics is concerned with studying that difference. Okay, so let's look at some examples to make these two concepts clearer. All right. So UCLA went through and collected height and weight information on 18-year-olds, and they went through and they studied the height and weight information to draw some conclusions about height and weight of those individuals. So let's just kind of write that down. So we got UCLA, collected height and weight information. On 18-year-olds. The information looked like the following. So they went through and they had an index. So this represented, each person got a number effectively. And then they went through and they wrote down the height for that individual and the weight for that individual. All right, so the first person in the data collection had a height of 65.8, and height were in inches, and a weight of 113, and weights were in pounds. The second person in the study had a height of 71.5 inches and a weight of 136 pounds. The third person had a height of 69.4 inches and a weight of 153 pounds. Okay, and they actually collected a whole lot of information on these 18-year-olds. I think the data set has like 20,000 people in it, but we're obviously just going to stop there. So it just continues going for pages and pages and pages. So let's just kind of talk about what we've got here. So when we refer to data, what we're referring to is we're referring to all of this, all of these. This is all data. Okay, so data is all the information that we collected in terms of the index, height, weight. That's all data. As far as variation, when we're looking at variation, we're looking at how the things are different, within each group. All right, so that would be variation. Each one of these you could go through and you could study how do the heights differ between the individuals? How do the weights differ between the individuals? And if you go through and analyze the heights, you could go through and draw some conclusions on how heights differ amongst the 20,000 people that are in the study. And one of the things that we'll talk about later in the semester is if you have 20,000 people in the study, can you go through and use the results that you get for those 20,000 people to extend that to all people, or all people that within the that are similar to the 20,000 that you collected. Okay, so height would be an example of a quantitative. Weight is quantitative. The index is it's a number, but it's more of a characteristic in that it keeps track of the difference between the people. So it's not really, you wouldn't call this quantitative information about the person. This is just a numbering scheme to go through and separate the people out. So you could have used A, B, C, and then it wouldn't be numbers, right? For example. And so the index would not be quantitative. It would be more like qualitative information. Okay, let's look at another data set, which is a little bit more unusual. So this is from the textbook. I thought this was an interesting example. Typically, when we think of data, we think of numbers. Typically, we're going through and we're studying numbers. Things like heights, weights, incomes, whatever you could think of. And typically, we're studying numbers. However, the example that they came up with in the text was you could go through and have hand-drawn circles, right? And so I will attempt to draw some circles by hand, and let's see how bad they look. All right, there's one, there's two, there's three. Okay, and then you can go through and have also tool drawn circles. And I can go through and use a circle. So it's not a circle, it's a circular shaped object because you can get ellipses too, but circle-ish. And we can go through, can we do another one? Yep, and another one. Yep. All right, and then in that case, so is this data? Yes, it is. So they're not numbers, but we've got observations, and those observations have characteristics about them, how large the circle is, how perfect the circle is. And so we would say that this is still data. Interesting example here. And then there is still variation, right? So the variation is how do these things differ? We have how do these things differ? They're not all the same, so there's some variation between them. And so we could go through and we could analyze how these things differ by using a variety of different techniques. You could go through and you could measure the size of the circle, how perfect the circle is, these look pretty circular, but if you went through and had a perfect circle and compared them, you might find that they're not, because I was using a tool that also does ellipses. And so I just, tried to make them look like circles, but this one maybe is not a perfect circle. It's too thin. Maybe this one looks too fat. This one looks pretty close to perfect, but you get the idea. As long as, so when we're going through and we're studying something, if it has variation, if there's differences between the different observations, then that's what we want to study, when we're going through and we're doing statistics. So at least in the context of this class, we're going to say that numbers alone are not data. So if I were to go through and write just a bunch of numbers, I said, we've got 10.00, 9.88, 9.81. And I just wrote a list of numbers here. We would say that this is not data. We need to have more information to go through and quantify these as data. I would say these are not data. However, if we were to go through and label these, as the weight in pounds of the 10 heaviest babies in North Carolina, in 2004, then the numbers become data. The label goes through and it contextualizes the data. It gives the data meaning. And so what we're going to say that data are numbers in context. Okay. And that concludes our first video. Okay, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.